Hi, my name is Keith, and this is a series of videos about healthy living. If you like these videos, please click like and please subscribe on my YouTube channel. This video was created during the Spring into Fitness Challenge, which was once the Mayor's Fitness Challenge, where communities would compete against communities and different agencies would compete against each other to be deemed the most fit community. And each week we included a video to provide health education during the challenge. This one is titled Walking Safely, and Shelby Villatoro is the presenter.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to have you all join me today in celebration of the 2023 Running Zone Spring into Fitness Challenge. This has been a great challenge. It's been running since February and really encouraging people to get up, get moving, and get active in their communities. So here at the Space Coast TPO, we've been really excited to take part and appreciate getting to host this webinar with you all today. My name is Shelby, and I am the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization. I work with communities across Brevard to help them learn how to be safer road users. And I also manage the TPO's Vision Zero program, supporting our local city and county efforts to achieve zero fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. But enough about me. I do want to take a moment to quickly introduce you to the Space Coast TPO. So the Space Coast TPO serves all of Brevard. We're countywide, and we continually monitor the conditions of our transportation system's modes and carry out planning at the regional level. We look at that big picture of transportation planning and help to assist in communication and coordination of the different modes and municipalities across Brevard. Obviously, making a safer system is part of that big picture, which is why I'm here today to talk about walking safely. So first, we are going to dive into the benefits and the risks of walking, and then we'll chat about the role that we all play in staying safe, from pedestrian laws to navigating different crossing types. And finally, I will share a few ways that you can be a change maker, whether that is adding more walking to your day or encouraging safer walking conditions within your community. After all, everyone reaps the benefits of having more people walking. Speaking of benefits, what do those entail? And I'm sure you've heard those a time or two, but there are a ton of ways that walking can support your health, save you money, help the planet. And so a few specifics that I want to point out, because there's way too many to list, are that impact on your body and boosting your health. So getting out and walking can lower risk factors for cardiovascular disease. That helps with managing your weight, decreasing blood sugar, and can also help with chronic stress, just being able to get that blood flowing. One thing that a lot of people don't think about is how walking can help you save money. And there are some unique ways for that. The obvious one being if you can walk instead of drive, you save a little bit of money on gas, but also maintenance costs on your vehicle. Obviously, if you walk more, you're a little bit healthier, so that's reducing the burden that healthcare may cost you. And then also, if you're using walking as exercise, you may be able to save some money on a gym membership. And with entertainment, using walking as a way to get out and socialize and interact with others can save you a couple of dollars, especially these days, right, with the cost of food and lunch and going out to the movies and such. So it's a great way to get you to save some money. Obviously, we all know that walking is good for the planet. There's fewer emissions reduced and also cuts back on that air pollution. And one other thing a lot of people don't think about is walking as transportation and how that can help you remain independent. So when we rely on a personal vehicle to get us around every day, and then we don't have that vehicle anymore for whatever reason, whether we choose to stop driving or need to stop driving for health reasons, we may lose our connection to the community. So knowing in advance, especially how to get around, how to go where you need and want to go by walking can help you stay independent and maintain your mobility for longer. But despite all of these great benefits, if we aren't practicing safe habits while on the roadways, whether we're walking, whether we're biking, whether we're driving, we do put ourselves and others at risk instead of being able to reap these great benefits. And so that's why we want to talk about safety here today. So sadly, in 2021, 273 people were involved in a crash while they were walking just here in Brevard County. Whether that person walked away with a scrape or a broken bone, or worse, if they didn't get to walk away from that scene at all, We know that these crashes negatively impacted both the walkers and the people driving, and we want to be able to avoid that. And so that's why in recent years, both the US Department of Transportation and the Florida Department of Transportation have embraced what we call the safe system approach. Now, the safe system approach does take a holistic approach to roadway safety. So it's focusing on different things from the design of our roads to having safer vehicles to driving at safer speeds, and focuses on how we can reduce serious injuries and fatalities on our roadways through this multifaceted proactive approach. Brevard County and the cities and towns here have also made this commitment, with 100% of our municipalities, the county, and even Brevard Public Schools adopting Vision Zero. And so Vision Zero goes in line with the safe system approach. It's based on this philosophy that traffic fatalities and serious injuries are preventable, and the only acceptable number of traffic fatalities and serious injuries is 0. Vision Zero requires that we have a fundamental change in the way we think about traffic safety and planning our roadways. Now, I want you to remember that it does not mean 0 crashes. Humans make mistakes, as we saw in our last slide, we make errors. And so it means that with Vision Zero, it means that those crashes do not and should not result in serious injury or loss of life. But we all have a role to play when it comes to Vision Zero. Your role, the people who are here today, as an everyday road user, is to practice safer habits regardless of how you get around. This could mean using a seatbelt when you drive or wearing a helmet when you ride your bike. But today, it means learning how to walk safely and to protect other walkers around you if and when you choose to drive. One thing I want to remind everyone as we go through the presentation today is that when a person walking collides with a vehicle, the person walking is always going to suffer the most. We do not have the protection of the metal in a large vehicle around us, right? You're a vulnerable road user when you're walking on the roadways. And so regardless of who has the right of way, you should always be prioritizing your own safety, because we as walkers have the most to lose. So no matter what laws or different scenarios we talk about today, just remember to always prioritize your safety when you're walking in the same space as other drivers. As this presentation is about safe walking, you know that we have to showcase what I'm going to call the classics, right? Many of which you've hopefully heard a time or 2 or 100, right? These are the things that were ingrained in us, hopefully as young children. Always walking on the sidewalk and crossing at crosswalks, looking left, right, left before crossing the street. Always wearing bright, reflective clothing, especially if you're walking at night. Never assume that a driver sees you, and be alert, something that's been more prevalent in recent years. Avoiding distractions like cell phones and keeping your ears free of headphones so that you can hear what's going on around you and react to things as you need to. Now, these are the key safety tips that you should always keep in mind any single time you walk. But the goal of today is really to take it a step further than these usual tips, right? Let's talk about some of the laws around crosswalks, what different signs, signals, and markings mean, and how to navigate spaces that do not provide the safest walking option for you. So we often hear cross at a crosswalk, right? If you're a pedestrian, we want you crossing at a crosswalk. But what exactly is considered a crosswalk? Most people will agree that this striped crossing here is a crosswalk. However, many people do not know that by Florida statute, a crosswalk is any place where the roadway intersects. So in this graphic here, every single strip where the sidewalk goes through is an actual legal crosswalk. Crosswalks may or may not be marked with that traditional ladder striping, right? And so that means that because Florida law requires that drivers stop for pedestrians and crosswalks, drivers should legally always stop anytime someone is crossing in any of these instances, whether they're striping or not. Crosswalks can also be considered controlled, meaning they have a traffic signal or a stop sign indicating whether or not they should stop, or they can be uncontrolled, meaning that there's no signage or signal to explicitly force those drivers to stop. Now, we are trained as drivers to expect to see people walking in crosswalks or even just at intersections if there's no striping. And so that's why crossing outside of these spaces puts walkers more at risk, because it's not as predictable to the people that are driving on the roadways around them. Every roadway is different, and there are different instances where it's up to drivers to really do their part. These are a couple of important examples of that. Especially on multi-lane roads, we do expect drivers by law to stop in both lanes that you are passing. If there is a person crossing from the opposite side of the road, the lane that they're closest to should be stopping as well. And one really dangerous instance can be if you have one driver that stops for you, but the other one does not. And I'll show you a better example of that in a later slide. And lastly, even at a controlled signal, such as this traffic signal here, you may get a walk signal, but they may also get that green light. And so they're expected to stop for you there as well. Drivers who don't stop for a person in a crosswalk are actually violating statute, and they can face a minimum $164 citation and 3 points on their driver's license. And as you should know by now, I've already said it, we as walkers need to do our part. We all have a role to play. And so when it comes to where a person can legally cross the street, there's actually only one situation in Florida where it's considered illegal. A lot of times you see people crossing outside of crosswalks or intersections, and while it may not be the safest option, it likely is not an illegal option for them. So the only time in Florida that it's actually illegal to cross the street is in this last example here, where you are crossing between two adjacent signalized intersections with no roadway in between them. This one here is legal because there is no signal at the second intersection. And this is legal because even though there are two signalized intersections, there is a roadway breaking those up. Something important that I always want to point out, because just because someone, like I said, is not crossing in an intersection or crosswalk doesn't mean that they're breaking the law. So if you have a traffic signal available when crossing, definitely use it. These are great locations for you to be able to safely cross, and drivers are expecting to see you there. Keep in mind though, you should only be crossing at these signals if you have the walk signal. So it's either going to say walk or it's going to have this white pedestrian symbol there. If the crossing does have this countdown, you should not enter the roadway. And by statute, you legally are not allowed to enter the roadway. You need to press the button and wait for the next signal. And then obviously, if we have a stop sign, you do not want to continue into the roadway. A couple important things to keep in mind is that most signals do require you to actually push the button to activate that walk signal. Unless you're in a very populated downtown area here in Florida, most of the time you're going to need to push the button, so it's a good idea to do it anyway. And sometimes traffic signals are actually designed a little negatively against pedestrians. That timing can be a little weird. So what's going to happen is you might get a walk signal and be told to walk across the street, but a driver turning left is also getting a green light. And so those are things you need to be considerate of when you're walking to make sure that you're looking for drivers who unfortunately might not be looking for you. The same is true for anyone that has a right on red where they're able to go, or if they're also getting a green light. Other locations where you may cross are at mid-block crosswalks, crossings that are not at those signals or intersections. So when it comes to crossing at the mid-block locations, you may see a few different crosswalk types with these different countermeasures that can help alert drivers to your intent to cross. The most common one you'll see is that standard mid-block location. And so when you're crossing here, even though drivers are legally supposed to stop for you, you want to put your safety first. Show your intent to cross, whether it's by putting a foot into the curb or even extending your arm out, indicating your intent to cross, and then make sure those drivers actually see you and stop before you enter into the roadway. RRFBs, these are very popular on our beachside communities. When you want to cross there, again, you do have to actually push the button. It's not there for decor. Activate those RRFB lights, but again, those are just extra signals to alert drivers that you're trying to cross. You do still need to make sure that they're actually stopping before you enter the roadway to make sure it's safe. And a PHB or hawk system is similar to RFB in that you have to push the button. The symbol is actually going to flash and then put a red stop light to tell drivers to stop until you have safely crossed the road. In all of these instances, The most important thing to remember is to actually make sure drivers are stopping before you enter the roadway. So as we discussed previously, we do have situations that can be a little more dangerous than others. So drivers that are coming from adjacent lanes of multi-lane roadways may be impacted by what we call visual screens. So you can see here, car A has done their part. They've stopped, they're letting the pedestrian safely cross the street. However, that car is blocking that line of sight for the driver of car B. If you are car B as a driver, one thing to keep in mind is just to make sure that you try to figure out what the reason is why somebody might be stopped in the middle of the roadway, right? But unfortunately, a lot of times these drivers just continue to go through, assuming that they're having some sort of vehicle issue or for whatever reason. People have places they want to go and they go as quickly as they can. And so the person walking can't see the car, the driver's not seeing them, and this can create a very dangerous conflict point. So one way to avoid that as someone walking is just to make sure you're extra aware and cautious of that, and that both sides of the roadways are stopping as you start to make your way across the street. And we do have several roundabouts and traffic circles here in the Brevard area. They may seem scary if you don't know how to use them. There's a lot of different things going on, but did you know that they are actually safer than traditional intersections? And that's because they create fewer conflict points than those traditional intersections do. They encourage safer speeds, and they also provide a shorter crossing that's set further back from driver decision points. And what that means is that as these people are turning and they're exiting and entering, that crosswalk is back a little bit further, allowing them to make that decision once they've exited once they've exited the roundabout. Crossing at a roundabout is similar to crossing at a traditional intersection or mid-block. As always, show your intent to cross, and then make sure you wait for drivers to come to a stop before you proceed into the crosswalk. So we've talked about several different types of crosswalks and roadway configurations, but I know I walked here a long time in many different places in Florida, and I understand there are many instances where our existing communities and roadways, also known as the built environment here, may not provide the most convenient or safe options for us to cross. And as you can see here, this gentleman on the left is attempting to cross the road, and it doesn't appear that there is any crosswalk in a close proximity to them. Here, they have what we call a goat path, or a path where you can see the grass has been worn. And what that shows is that people want to walk there, but there's no existing facility for them to do so safely, or a designated space for them. Special care does need to be provided in these instances where there is not that designated space for you as a pedestrian, right? So we want to be extra cautious on these points. So I have a few tips for different scenarios you might run into. First, if you're walking on a roadway with no sidewalk, like we just saw in the last photo, you want to walk a safe distance away from the roadway along the grassy shoulder if possible. One thing that you should have learned as a young child is that you always want to walk facing traffic, as this allows you to see any oncoming vehicles and even react should they not see you. And so this kind of gives you that opportunity to make eye contact with your driver. I've already mentioned this several times today, but it is so important. Crosswalks and intersections are the safest place to cross the street. If you choose to cross the street outside of a crosswalk or an intersection, though, you are legally allowed to do so in most cases, unless it is that situation with those adjacent signals that we talked about. However, one thing to keep in mind is that if you do decide to cross away from a crosswalk or intersection, you, as the person walking, the pedestrian, are required to yield to vehicular traffic and not the other way around. So if at all possible, always try to cross at a crosswalk or intersection, even if it means going slightly out of your way, because you can't put a timestamp on safety, right? If you can't cross at a crosswalk or intersection, or there's not one available, do the following. You want to locate a well-lit area where you have the best view of traffic, cross at right angles. So go straight across the roadway, perpendicular to the street. You do not want to cross diagonally or weave through traffic, because those are unpredictable traffic patterns and it's not a safe option. And wait for a gap in traffic that allows enough time to cross safely, and continue watching for traffic as you cross. The worst thing that you can do is assume that a driver sees you. So you want to make sure you're doing what you can to make yourself seen and to pay attention to them. So I've given you a lot of info, but let's put these skills into action by actually getting out and walking, because if we want to reap those benefits, we have to get out and actually do the walking. So here are some ways that you can incorporate more walking in your day-to-day life, hopefully regardless of circumstance and what you've got going on. More than half of daily trips in the US are less than 3 miles. Think about that. More than half are less than 3 miles. And I know 3 miles sounds like a lot, but what if there's something that's half a mile away from you or a quarter of a mile away? Think about what places are within walking distance of your home or your job, and consider walking for those short trips instead of driving. For instance, my husband and I, we have tried to make a little pact that anytime there's a place within a half a mile of us, that we walk to that place whenever possible instead of getting in the car and driving. So think about the following as you start to formulate that plan. Can you walk to pick up your lunch order, stop at a convenience store, and you only have a couple of groceries to grab? Maybe you can go and grab those by hand. Is there a coffee shop you can get your Sunday morning coffee? Is your favorite park within walking distance? And remember, you can even mix modes. So if you can walk to a bus stop, you can actually take a bus to a destination that's further away. If you do not have enough options around, maybe you're stuck in a suburb further back from some of the things that you want to walk to, consider doing your shopping or your dining at a larger central location where you can walk from store to store. A good option that immediately comes to mind for me is the Avenue in Viera, because you can park there and spend the whole day walking from shop to shop, getting your steps in, boosting that health, right? You can just drive to larger malls or even plazas, shopping plazas that have a lot of options. And you can invite your friends and family and have a big shopping day. You don't need to bounce from store to store in your car. And if all else fails, challenge yourself to park at the back of the parking lot instead of the closest spot you can find. I am very much guilty. I look for the closest one. But this is such an easy way to get your steps in with minimal effort. So that, go right past all the traffic at the front, fighting for a spot, go right to the back, and you'll be able to park it and get your steps in. One other way that you can incorporate more walking into your day and your lifestyle is to make it part of your social routine. If you have a Facebook group or meetup next door, or even just like an HOA community, see if you can start a neighborhood walking group. Everyone goes out on Tuesday evenings. We finally had our time change, so the weather is great. Get out there and go for a quick 30-minute walk every Tuesday, every week, whenever you want to. One option is to also get your friends involved and maybe go for a stroll instead of going for lunch or dinner. And if you need to eat, maybe pack a picnic and you all can go for a walk and then enjoy lunch outside. And what I like to do is grab a couple of coworkers and actually take a daily afternoon walk right after lunch, get the digestive juices flowing, and just chit chat for a little bit. Even 15, 20 minutes is something, and it allows you to enjoy the benefits of walking. We talked a lot about the built environment and about being part of your community and having that community connection. And communities should be built to serve the people that are living there. So if you want to walk more, or there are some things in your community that make you not feel safe, share your thoughts with your local leaders and the people that help make those decisions. As you walk around, identify reasons why you might not feel safe while walking, and then share those concerns when you can. You can actually conduct what's called a walk audit or host a community one to talk about safety issues and needs that you have in your community. AARP, if you Google the AARP walk audit, it's also a great toolkit that's available on their website that you can actually print out or order and go and do a walk audit of your community. This is also a really fun activity. They have children's versions that you can take your kids out. Summer's coming, and have them get involved in thinking about safety. I encourage you all to get involved with the planning process in your city and county. Stay looped into any changes or updates that are coming to your area, and talk about them and see how they impact the different modes that you want to use. And lastly, you can attend public meetings for different projects and share your feedback. Let your project leaders know that walking is important to you and you want to be able to get around safely. Here on the screen, I've included a QR code. If you scan that, will actually take you to the residents guide for creating safer communities for walking and biking. It includes a lot of the stuff I just talked about today and more. So if that's something that you want to champion in your community, definitely either Google that or use the QR code to visit that resource. It's a really great one. And lastly, here at the TBO, we want you to stay connected and safe as well. So on our website, you can sign up for our newsletter to receive the latest updates. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and can join us on Nextdoor where we post updates as well. If you have a community club, church, neighborhood association, or any other group that you think would be interested in learning about traffic safety, whether that's walking, biking, driving, please let me know and we can schedule a presentation and come out and chat with you all. I encourage you all to spread the word and remind those around you to always practice safe habits while on the road, regardless of how they choose to get around. So if they're walking, biking, or driving, or even riding transit, however they get around. And lastly, the easiest thing that you can do to help us reach zero, and hopefully we will get there with that serious injuries and fatalities, is to be a safer road user yourself. So do your part to be the change and help us ensure that everyone who uses our roadways gets home safely. Thank you so much for your time today. And if you have any questions or would like to get involved, please email me at shelby.villatoro@sctpo.com and I'd be happy to chat with you. Thanks so much for joining me today.